Nwaneri tries one!
And with Arsenal's 1-0 loss to Spurs in Hong Kong, Arsenal's 25-26 season is officially over. It's been a wild ride. Thank you guys for coming along on that journey with us. So we look ahead to 26-27. In all seriousness, welcome into Not That Kind of Gooner, an Arsenal podcast, and we are coming to you after the first North London derby to not be held in North London, to be held internationally. So we played that and we lost, and it was a pretty meh game. But we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get into some performances that we're not so thrilled about. We're gonna get into some performances that are encouraging, and we'll also talk about a couple debutants and maybe how things look going into the actual season, and maybe we'll kind of touch on some transfer stuff as well. But as always, I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. And with me is John. You can follow on Twitter at 305cast. John, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good. That was funny about the season being over. It does. You do get a little bit of that sense of that new season coming and the new anxiety coming from the fans. So, I always forget what that's like, and then it starts happening all over again, and here we are.
It's always so weird to see, look, I get it. It wasn't a great performance today, right? But the amount of people who are just coming out and saying that basically this summer has been a wash and that we're screwed from the get-go and nothing has changed. I just don't get it. I had someone in my mentions telling me that our summer window was the dumbest thing that we could have possibly done, that we shouldn't have done this depth window. And it's okay, well, we signed Zubimendi, who's definitely starting at 6 for us. We signed Gyokeres, who has a good shot at taking the starting center forward spot. We signed Madueke, who, yes, is probably going to be the immediate backup for Saka, but as we'll talk about later, I like his odds of taking over at left wing too if we don't go on and sign someone like Eberechi Eze or Rodrigo. And it sounds like we really want to sign Eze, so we'll see what happens there. It's just, I don't know, it's just weird. I feel like, I saw someone else say that the good times from 22-23 are never coming back. And I tend to agree with that now. I just feel like the longer we go without achieving one of those big trophies in this current Arteta project, the more and more people are just waiting for one thing to go wrong before kind of coming out with priors and saying that they were right and Arteta sucks and the project has been a failure, yada yada. But I mean, do you see it the same way?
I think that there is a big hurdle for Arteta in that he hasn't won kind of a big trophy. We had the FA Cup his first season, obviously, but there was a lot going on there, and a lot has happened since then. And there has to be something that's said about his ability to get us back into the Champions League, and not just in the Champions League, but really competing in the Champions League and showing that we are one of the people that are in the conversation to win it. We're definitely going into the Champions League this season as one of those kind of players as well, one of those kind of teams as well. So, a lot should be said about that. But I think that there's a big swath of fans that are just not going to accept that, and to an extent, I understand. We want the silverware. We've had this conversation before, where when you look at these players and certain ones that we want to stay, you look at your Salibas and your Sakas, less so Saka, but maybe Saliba. Although, given what he's been saying, it sounds like he's really involved in this project, understandably. But there is a sense that maybe at some point you're worried that if we're not getting the silverware in, we're not going, it's not good. We already have Richarlison. I don't know if you saw that, but my United friend sent me a picture of Saliba posting a picture of him, and then Richarlison commented, "You look a little bit skinny, bro. You should try lifting some trophies." which is like great. Now we're having Spurs players that are.
Is that
I don't know.
is that
I don't
real?
know if it's a real picture because it is from a United fan, but it is. But the point is that you get that kind of banter is around there, and even now coming from Spurs, who just came off a big trophy. As much as we may not think that that's enough for us, it comes a point in time where you start looking at what this team is doing and realizing that it probably won't be enough without a major trophy for a lot of these fans. And it's kind of an indictment of the way that football is nowadays. I think even just winning the FA Cup, let's say we just win the FA Cup, that's not going to be enough. And I'm not saying that that's the wrong way to look at it, because I think that when you look at the investment that we've made, when you look at the players that we have and how close we've been over the season, you expect to see something at the end of it at some point. So I do commiserate with fans who are a little bit, or a lot of it in some cases, impatient for something to happen. And you know what? That's actually the wrong way to say it. I'm not going to say impatient, because I think we've all been very patient with these projects and with everything and how close we've been. So it's a question of just getting it done at some point. They need to. And this season, I think it needs to be this season. I think we need to win a trophy this season, one way or another. Yeah,
it's tough because you're kind of grappling with what exactly the idea of progress is. And the 22-23 season, that was really easy, right? Because we went from finishing 5th to, getting 50 points in 19 games and competing for the Premier League very, very surprisingly, right? And that's an easy recipe for sudden excitement. Mm-hmm. But when you get to second, right? A lot of people understandably think progress is going from second to first, and that is true, right? But I don't think people really take into account how difficult that is and how big that gap really is to bridge, right? And just, I have a lot of patience because I think we've been getting better and better each season. I mean, last season is an exception, but even then, I think there's mitigating circumstances. But like, I just feel like people are kind of at the point where it's like trophy or bust. Mm-hmm. And I do think we're approaching that point, but at the same time, it's tough because at the same time, I'm just one of those people who I always kind of am cognizant of how hard it is to win a trophy now. You know what I mean? Especially like the Premier League and the Champions League. If we were in the Europa League,
I was about to say, like if this Arsenal team was in the Europa League, we'd walk it probably.
Easy.
Yeah. So, but I get what you're saying. It is, and now, and you know what's like really deflating when you see like stories of like now Liverpool might sign Isak. It's like I mean, that's kind of the problem, I think. However, with the approach that we've taken to recruitment over the last couple of seasons, I mean, I've been beating this drum to death. I don't want to say maybe too little too late, but there were times in the last couple of seasons where had we made a little bit sharper signings and addressed deficiencies that were clearly there, instead of dilly-dallying with, all due respect to Eddie Nketiah, players like Eddie Nketiah at our center forward. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we've needed a striker since Aubameyang left in 2022. Since he, fucked off to Barcelona and decided that, he was just going to show up there and force a loan or whatever it was back then. And then they canceled his contract. We've had a need for a striker since then. And finally, we've seemed to address that. Kai Havertz, I think, did great, but he wasn't signed as a striker. Marino, I think, stepped in and did great, but he's not a striker. It's like there's Gabriel Jesus, sure, but that wasn't working out. And I feel like I get why the club did what they did, but it's hard to look at the way that we've treated the transfer window. I'm sure we're going to get to talking about the games at some point, but it's difficult to see how we've treated transfer windows and then kind of expected certain things to materialize in terms of trophies, but I think the time is now. We need to do it. And
in terms of transfer windows, I understand people wanting to sign superstars. I don't empathize really, because like a lot of what I've seen a lot of people say something to the effect of get the superstars first. It's not Whole Foods. You don't walk in and grab Isak or Rodrigo and put them on the scanner at the checkout line and basically say, I'll take him to go. I mean, you're paying the GDP of a small nation to get these guys, so these turn into protracted sagas. But on kind of as a second point as to why we didn't take that approach this season, I'd put it like this. This summer, recruitment-wise, we took 2 steps forward.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is last summer we took 1 step back, right? So
it's still 1 step forward, Sham.
Still 1 step forward.
It's
still 1 step forward, but the problem is, and the way I look at it is we could have been in the running for Isak this summer, but we left ourselves so much to do with whatever budget that we had.
Yep.
So you can't go spend 120 on 120 million on Isak, and that I might be lowballing it there, and then go get Zubamendi and Mascara and a winger and Eza and Kepa and and whoever else, right? Liverpool, I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how they're fudging those numbers. Time will tell. I strongly suspect that they're going to have a couple quiet windows after this summer, but we just left ourselves too much to do this year. So that's where the blame lies for me. And it's tough. It's tough, but yeah, I guess all that's to say, like, I understand why people are impatient, and it's very valid, but at the same time, I just feel like a lot of the outrage is maybe people just trying to guard their hearts a little bit before things come to pass.
And with that being said, I know you started the podcast off kind of flippantly talking about how the season's over. It clearly isn't. Like, I'm very excited about the season. I'm very excited to see what Gyokeres can bring. I'm very excited about Zubamendi. I'm very excited to see all these new signings. And and just because we lost today does not mean, or doesn't change anything. It doesn't change that. Like, this was a preseason game. I know it's the North London Derby. I know they get this weird looking, I guess you call it a trophy. I don't know what the hell that thing was. But
the Hong Kong Festival Cup or whatever that was.
Yeah, it was like, it looked like the Singular logo from back in the day. Remember? Singular Wireless. My dating there's like a half of
I remember
people,
Singular. Yeah.
The Singular Wireless logo trophy. So I, like, obviously you want to win every North London Derby. Every time you play Tottenham, you want to win, or you at least don't want to lose. That's it. You don't want to lose. So, and you certainly don't want. You know what it is. For me at least, you're so excited about this new season, right? Yeah. And you just signed a strike, what could be considered, I think, by a lot of people as a world-class finishing player, a center forward, one that we've been crying out for a long time. We should be excited. And then you have this like flat, gross, boring performance on both sides, really, where they were far more dangerous in many moments than us. And it doesn't help that it's a North London Derby. It's a preseason game. You have players drop down injured. We'll get to that, I guess, with like Trossard, and it's a whole thing. And it just kind of like deflates the vibe a bit, and I've mentioned this. I do not, we were talking about this. I don't know why we would agree to play Premier League teams in a preseason match in the first place.
It's such a terrible idea.
Why the hell would we do that? It's not just the incentive to go a little bit harder and potentially get an edge over someone that you're going to compete for a lot of money. It's like there's a conflict of interest almost. Like, we should not be playing Spurs in preseason. As much as I appreciate that fixture and I love watching Arsenal Spurs, and that's kind of why you watch football, to watch those kind of games, you need to be pragmatic about it. And I'm just baffled as to why I'm not baffled. I know why. It's because they want to make money. It's all about money. So that's what it is. And at the end of the day, that's all they care about. And it doesn't matter if it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Luckily, with this manager, Spurs manager, what's his name?
Thomas Frank.
Frank, yeah, I think he's a kind of reasonable, level-headed guy. And I know he's not the kind that would tell them to go out and injure us. And to be fair, like I thought we were a little bit rougher than they were in many parts of the game. So I forgot what the question was. Anyway.
No, I mean it's a really good point because like I was seeing Barcelona beat FC Seoul 7-3 or whatever it was. And I was like, that's a fun game. That's a nice way to get the mood up a little bit, kind of shake off the rust ahead of the season, but you're not, it's not like a high intensity game. You're not playing a team that has a vested interest in you being bad this season or you like getting injured. And so like, why the hell are we playing Newcastle and Spurs and who's the first team that we played?
Milan.
And Milan at least is fine. Milan makes sense, right?
Yeah, that was good. That was good to like do 3 teams like that. Like why do that?
Why the 2 teams that are most likely to injure our players and most likely to enjoy it?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
It's like if you go back to 2014 and like we're going to do our preseason against Sean Dyche and Burnley and like it's like what are we? Can you imagine if we did that? It'd be like what on earth are you thinking?
And I get it. Like you don't want to have like a full preseason against like FC Midtjylland and like Young Boys and then the Hong Kong 11 or whatever. Like I get that. That's not challenging. That doesn't up the level to a point where you need it to be. But like, I remember the 22-23 preseason and we smacked the shit out of like FC Orlando. And then we played Everton and then we played Chelsea, right? You see what I mean? And like Chelsea was a lot of fun because at that point we kind of built up a little bit of fitness and we came into it kind of being like, oh, like this is a team that we really don't like, whereas like you're playing Milan, that's cool. And then you're playing Newcastle and it's just like, okay, well, they're going to try to kick us and they're going to sit in the low block. And then you're playing Spurs, they're going to try to kick us and they're going to sit in the low block. And it's like, okay, like what are you getting out of that aside from playing low box? I don't know.
Let's play. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. So I guess if I'm Arteta and I'm trying to organize this and coming up with a reason why it's a good idea, I think you make the argument that you're not being able to, I guess, lose in those kind of circumstances highlights certain things that you still need to work on, which we probably should know by now, but all right, let's put that to the side for a second. You get an early face of that kind of a low blocking situation versus kind of a happy-go-lucky game. All right. Maybe the same reason why you do penalties, even though that they're irrelevant in this kind of a format, is because you want to face a team that's doing it competitively, and you can't really replicate that in a training session. In the same way, you really can't replicate an aggressive low block in a training session. So, and certainly not an aggressive low block from another Premier League team. That's not, with your teammates. So I that I guess would be the positive, right? But I feel like how much, I don't know. I'll defer to them that they made the right decision and that it wasn't, maybe they didn't have a choice. Maybe it was just like contractual and like, but I have a feeling that Arteta and co would have had a say in all of this and what they can, but I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah. There's that. And also I guess you could argue that, that's the level that you're trying to measure yourself against and trying to get like the new players up to speed against. So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses for it. I just think it really doesn't let you have like a fun preseason. You know what I mean?
That's the point, right? So it's like, I just want to relax and watch us kick, 10 goals in and, I want to see Zubamendi score and I want to see Gyokeres score and I want to, maybe that's being selfish. I as a fan, I don't know. I want to be entertained, and that was not an entertaining game. That was two teams that were afraid to go full throttle, that or to express themselves because of the nature of that meeting of those two teams. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Tell you what, let's get into the game itself, and I want to start out with the concerning performances because I think there's a lot of meat there.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess who from the match concerned you the most? Like which performance really kind of left you thinking this is a worry?
All right, so Trossard getting injured is the big worry for me for, I guess, two reasons. A, assuming that he was going to go and be sold to fund some other player that would better suit the team, whatever Arteta had in mind. That's clearly harder to do if Trossard's injured. And two, if he was going to stay and we were going to alternate and find someone else to sell, well, that's not going to happen either. He can't, now we have an injured player. So, but in terms of performance, I'm a little concerned with Martinelli. And it's like beating a dead horse at this point, but like there's a lot of the same kind of stuff that I see from him, and it feels like he's not learning. It feels like he's not progressing. And he can't. Maybe 3 years ago, we could say he's young. He's got plenty of time. His work rate is amazing. Like his work rate's amazing. All right, I'm not faulting him for his trying. You remember from the documentary, the guy is a workhorse. He's insane. Like the coaches love him and the way he trains, and I think that gives him a lot of leeway in the squad, especially when you're considering the manager assessing whether to sign a new player to replace him. But what I see from him is a lot of the same problems again and again. I see a lot of mistakes that I think he should have taken out of his game a long time ago. And I don't want to judge too harshly on one match, right? But it's not. It's been a progression. It's been a progression with him, and it's been the same thing. Like I do not see a lot of improvement whereas we've seen it from other players under Arteta. If you can point to something that shows he's improved. I don't. He looks the same player that he did last season, the season before. I mean, that's it. It seems like that's what we got.
Yeah, I think he's plateaued in his development, honestly. And there was a stat that was floating around after the game, talking about how we attempted 17 dribbles and we completed 3 as a team.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I think Martinelli was a big part of that problem. I just this past week, right, against Newcastle, he was up against Kieran Trippier, who, is 59 years old at this point. And this week he was up against Pedro Porro, who's a really good offensive fullback, but he's not exactly like, he's not Yuri and Timber, right? So you would hope that Martinelli is able to get past him a few times a game and create something. But I honestly can't think of a single Martinelli moment of note from this match. And it's been like that for quite some time.
Yeah.
And again, like this is preseason, so I'm really not trying to put I'm not trying to draw like these massive conclusions from it, but like this is part of a pattern that we've been seeing for the better part of a year now, maybe better part of 2 years now. So, it's just concerning because we fell into those same old patterns where Saka was getting triple teamed, and then you had Martinelli isolated and he couldn't do anything in that position. And then what I think is even more damning, when Max Dowman came on, when 15-year-old Max Dowman came on, Spurs thought to themselves, it's more worth our time to put 3 defenders on the teenager than it is to put them on Martinelli.
So that's a very interesting point, and I've been talking about this for a while now, and something stuck out to me a few seasons ago that has kind of been like, yep, that's exactly it. I forget, it was an Athletic article, and they were talking about how teams have tried to figure out how to deal with Arsenal. So this is when we were kind of tearing things up a little bit, and it was very difficult to play against Arsenal. And they interviewed a scout from a Premier League team. They didn't name the team or the scout, but they said, or not a scout rather, but one of the coaches that kind of dealt with how they set up against us and train against us. And very poignantly, he said that they tend to focus on our left-hand side defensively, and not defensively, meaning like they don't worry as much about that side as on the right, because they know they can kind of shut down Martinelli fairly easily. And what they said was, and it's something that I've thought, very one-dimensional. So once he has a few things that he's very, very good at, but once that is done, once you stifle that, once you kind of know what he's going to do, there's not much else that he has in his toolbox. And then oftentimes, if you leave him to his own devices, he'll make it more difficult for himself. He likes to play with his head down a lot, and he'll run into blind alleys. He'll get stuck in to situations where he's being defended out of a match, and he just does not seem to have the ability to get out of that. And it's sad to say for a player that young to say he doesn't have the ability, because I think the talent is obviously there and the work rate is there. I'm not quite sure exactly what has gone on with Martinelli for the past couple seasons, but it does look like it is concerning to me about his progression. And this is not a reactionary take based off of this one match. I have been on record talking about my kind of consternation with Martinelli and how one-dimensional he can be. So I thought that today was a good example of that. Another one, kind of, is Odegaard, and specifically Odegaard in front of goal. Okay, yeah. Odegaard running with the ball, Odegaard making decisions outside the box, Odegaard passing and creating space and opportunity for his teammates. Fantastic. Odegaard in front of goal is an entirely different player. And it's so frustrating sometimes. So I don't know what Arteta and the coaching staff needs to do with him. Maybe it's not going to be as needed now that we have Gyokeres and all that stuff. But, man, for a guy that's so talented and so technically gifted, it's kind of like Ozil. Like, Ozil was so technically gifted. We're like, bro, why aren't you scoring more? You could thread a pass through, like, two players' legs from, the halfway line, but you can't pass it into the back of the net. Like, what? He just lacks that conviction, or I don't know. He takes too much too many touches. He spends too long on the ball. He second guesses himself, or he just misses it. And that's like his story since that one season where it was obviously a purple patch where he was kind of scoring left and right outside the box even, but I don't know.
I will say, I was happy with his start to the match because he took 2 shots within 3 minutes, and I thought they were both pretty decent attempts. But I mean, for me, my issue with Odegaard kind of this past week has been the positions that he takes up offensively. He's just so risk averse, right? And when you have a guy operating as like your 8-10 hybrid in attack, you can't have them just like sitting in the right half space and like not doing anything. You know what I mean? I feel like when we get into the final third, there was one moment where Saka had the ball and he had, kind of one guy coming up to him. And then I think there's another Spurs player kind of dropping back. And Odegaard was just sitting in this guy's cover shadow in the right half space instead of running like towards the byline, because there was this big space kind of, not near the corner flag necessarily, but like, towards the top of Spurs' third. And Odegaard just kind of stood there. And like, so you leave Saka in a position where he has to beat his man, where like he doesn't have any support. And I don't know, I've seen him do that so many times. And you look at it, you realize why he does it, because like if he runs into the space, there's no one behind Odegaard except for like, maybe Zubimendi can push up a little bit. Maybe Rice can tuck in a little bit to like prevent Spurs from countering. But at a certain point, is that not worth the risk to run? Because if you run into that space, Saka's going to give you the ball, and then you have an opportunity to cross it. And I don't understand why he does that. And
It
then
was also the last game, the Newcastle. Sorry, the Newcastle game is another one. There was a great clip of him. There's two runners that were splitting a Newcastle defender. I forget who it was. Whoever's on the right side that was at the time. And
I think it was Dowman.
It was Dowman. Yeah, it was. Well, Dowman's making the run. I'm talking about the Newcastle defender. It was It would have been. So they had two players, one on the left side. I guess it might have been Havertz, and then Dowman to the right. And you see Odegaard looking up. He sees both those players, and he just holds on to the ball. And then that moment's gone. Now they're offside, and he can't make the pass. And then he turns around and passes it back. And you're going, I can't justify that. And I imagine that Arteta would. I can't fathom a world where Arteta told him that's the way we need to be playing. That's the way we need to be playing. As good as Odegaard is, I think he can tend to stifle some of the transitional play that we have, because I think he thinks a little bit too much. I'm not worried about that as like a big problem. I think that that's going to be something that we can work out, but I think that's just something to notice. One thing I did notice, especially early on in the match, that we were doing a lot of like over the top through the center passes, like, which we don't often do, like just transition, like get the ball from the defense and then try to lob it up to like Saka or someone like that. And my guess is that we're doing that to train our defenders to get the ball to Gyökeres, who's going to be in those kind of positions. And just to get them in the habit of putting balls over defensive lines, not being afraid to do that. That would be my guess / hope. So anyway.
Also Madueke as well. I think the other issue I've had with Odegaard, and this kind of connects to what you were mentioning just now. He's so loath to use his weak foot. And I think part of that problem with Dowman, right, was not only did Odegaard take like the low risk solution, but also that ball was on his right foot when, the pass was most on to Dowman, and he decided not to play the pass on his right foot. And I just think he really compromises so many good moments in attack by choosing to put the ball into his left foot and kind of preferring to do it there. There was one moment against Spurs where he managed to play a switch to Saka with his right foot, and my first thought was, oh, okay, so you can do that. You just don't. So yeah, I mean that's kind of been my problem with Odegaard. Based on what I've heard about Gyökeres, I think he's going to yell at Odegaard a fair bit.
Do you remember? So, and I was just talking to someone about this. It was really interesting when he had, they do like the behind the scenes during the signings. And what I love those, by the way. Those are some of my favorite content that Arsenal does. Whenever we make a new signing, they do the behind the scenes, and then usually now what they've shown is like the car ride to like the training ground where they show them their kit with their name on it for the first time. And it usually has like a letter from someone, like maybe when from like Rice, if it was an English international, or Saka, or in Odegaard. In this case, it was a letter from Odegaard. And this is directly to your point. When Gyökeres is reading this letter from Odegaard, he gets to a point where it's like, kind of this like cordial, like, let me know if there's anything I could do for you and blah, 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 to make it easier. And then like he just stops and goes, some assists, please.
Yeah,
that's what he says. So like he's going to be expecting that. And I think that getting the ball quickly to Gyökeres is going to be something that Arteta is going to work on with Odegaard. And you mentioned something, and it's kind of what I was getting at with like the Ozil conversation. It's like spot on. He can do these certain things. Like in this case, you were talking about using his opposite foot. We know that he can do it. He's so talented. He's so technically gifted, but he just needs to like maybe stop overthinking things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Theo Walcott effect. If you remember Theo Walcott, the second he had a minute to think about something that he was going to do, he would screw it up. When he got the ball really quick and he just had to make a snap decision, he was lethal. But the second he said, well, let me make a decision, drops 2 levels.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that might happen sometimes with Odegaard.
Yeah. Yeah, I just Yeah, I think Odegaard really. I think he has shown improvement in terms of the shooting aspect, but kind of there's other faults of his that haven't really improved.
Mhm.
As much as we want them to, and I think kind of fitting into that theme along with Martinelli and Odegaard is maybe Kai Havertz, because I thought he had a bit of a sloppy game today, and there were I think he did okay in terms of winning his duels, but there were just moments where the ball would come to him, and he wouldn't really. Havertz does this thing sometimes where he just doesn't look like he doesn't know what he's supposed to do with the ball, right? And he kind of messes up very simple actions. He doesn't turn well, um, and there are even moments where he kind of blew simple passes. It almost harkened back to his first couple months at the club where he just looked devoid of confidence. Like there was one pass he was supposed to play back to Saka, and it was almost kind of lazy the way he laid it off, and so a Spurs player intercepted it, and he just had this look of just like, God damn it,
Exasperating.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
wondering how much the notion, how we know that he's a kind of a confidence player, and we know that because Arteta has told us that, and we know that when we were singing his name and he was the main guy, and he was scoring some goals, that he was playing amazingly. He was, found his foot. But I can't help but think that with signing Gyökeres has negatively affected Kai Havertz. Too early to say, but maybe I'm projecting, maybe not. I think that it's not unreasonable to extrapolate that might be having an effect on Kai Havertz. And I think that he's a professional. I think that he'll be able to get over it. I think that we're going to see some good stuff from him this season, and I think that they're both Kai and Gyökeres are going to push each other. That's my prediction. That could turn out very differently, as many predictions that I made have done in the past. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that Kai does not look like his full self. Again, though, it's hard because we have to like paint all of this within the paintbrush of it being preseason, right?
yeah. It's preseason, and we're talking about a guy who missed like 4 months of action
Yeah.
with a torn hamstring, his first like really serious injury in his career. So I still think there's something to the idea that he's shaking the rust off, and there are reasons for it, and also they're playing in a different continent, several time zones ahead. They just landed from a plane. You can give him excuses if you want to, or not excuses, but you can explain the performance.
Right.
But yeah, it's just excuse me. I just think it wasn't a game I wanted to see from him today, especially in light of Gyökeres being there. But I still maintain that they're going to play different roles. I think Havertz is definitely. It's funny. I think if it weren't for the fact that Gyökeres joined 5 minutes ago, um,
Literally, he like came off the plane and walked on the pitch, basically.
yeah, and like, I saw people. It's mostly rival fans, so it's already in bad faith to begin with. But like, I saw people like coming off that performance, like what's his face? No new thing, right? That guy was tweeting about how Gyökeres was a mistake of a signing, and he's gonna, end the project, blah blah blah. And it's like the guy flew 14 hours. Actually, no, that's not even true. The guy flew from Lisbon to London, and then he did like all the media stuff, and he signed his contract, and he did his medical, and then he got back on a plane and flew 14 hours to Singapore. Got off the plane, got in a van, went to the stadium, put on the jersey, came out, said hi to all the fans there, then went and sat on the bench, went home, slept, woke up, did training, and like the next day was asked to play 15 minutes against a Spurs team. that like is already like in the thick of preseason. Like the guy is not ready. Like he is not physically ready.
Yeah, I know. Look, I don't even know who that is. Is that like a famous quote unquote
He's
person? Like,
he's
I don't
he's
really.
like he's the tactico to end all tacticos. I'll put it like that.
Okay, all right. So when I got it, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, people say stuff because I don't know. People have all different motivations for saying stuff, and it's mostly dumb. So, yeah, like it's I kind of just if you accept that as like as something true, then I feel like you can kind of shrug it off a little bit because it's just silly. I'm really excited to see what he can do. He's obviously a player that's very hungry. I mean, to go through all of that stuff. And the more and more we learn about him, it's kind of what I talked about a couple podcasts ago when we were talking about Gyokeres and how he's kind of made by like grinding gravel. Like this is a tough guy.
Yeah.
And he's kind of worked his way up through his entire career to get where he is right now. In a way that's, people call it a late bloomer, but there's something to be said about being able to do that and kind of having this impetus at that, realizing like you don't have that much time left in your career. He's 27. He's obviously got, at least hopefully, knock on wood, 3, 4, 5 years left in his career. But this is a guy that wants to make those count, and he's had an opportunity to do that. And I think we're going to see an insane person. I have a weird feeling. I have a feeling that he is an insane person and that he's going to play that way.
No, I think once he gets settled in, I think we're not going to see the second coming of Thierry Henry, but I think we're going to see
Alexis
the
Sanchez
most.
vibes.
Yeah.
I get Alexis Sanchez vibes from Gyokeres.
Yeah, I think we're just going to see someone who is extremely competent.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for him because if he was ready to go, I feel like the beginning of this match would have been a more suitable game state for him because, you're playing a team that's trying to attack you and they're not sitting back yet. They don't have anything to defend. So at that point, you do have a little bit of the space in behind to play Gyokeres in. But, we subbed him in with 15 minutes to go against the Spurs team that were just, content to sit in their box and, put 10 people in there and punt the ball out for the rest of the match. And, that's their right. So, in terms of like Havertz and Gyokeres, I think they'll play different roles. I think they could complement each other. I still think there's something to the idea of playing the two of them together. How you do that is up to Arteta, but like, if you can somehow figure out a way to put Havertz on the pitch as a second striker for Gyokeres, I mean, I just imagine that dynamic of.
Well, I mean, if you look at his stats and you look at kind of where he is historically, he does love to operate that left-hand side. So maybe there's a universe where you kind of have him, like, if you want to play him like in a front three, play him on the left wing sometime, or maybe like a 4-4-2, like Inter did last season.
I think a 4-4-2 would be interesting, or like maybe like a 4-3-3, but you have Zubimendi.
I was going to say, how do you justify not having Odegaard, Zubimendi, and Rice on the pitch at the same time?
I think I would take Odegaard off.
Interesting.
And I would put Rice and Zubimendi there as like a double pivot, and then obviously you keep Saka and whoever it is playing left wing in there.
Yeah.
And then Rice kind of plays that. Rice is more of a 10 than an 8 in this situation. And then maybe, not Rice, Havertz. Havertz is more of a 10 than an 8 in this situation. And then Rice, can make his way up into the final third, make those late runs into the box along with everyone else. But I don't know. I'm really intrigued by the idea of Havertz like floating in after, Saka and Gyokeres and maybe like Madueke or Eze kind of wreak havoc in the box.
Yeah.
And just kind of latches on to the ball in free spaces and, makes of that what he will. I don't know. I think there's something to it. I don't think we're going to see it all that much, but I do think it's a really interesting idea. What did you make of David Raya's performance?
Well, I mean that, he does have a tendency to kind of be in no man's land every once in a while, and I think it's a lot of it is because when Gabriel and Saliba are playing together, and then you have, I think, Timber and Lewis Skelly or Calafiori on the left there. When you have that solid of a defensive partnership, I feel like you can kind of be a little bit lackadaisical in where you are positionally. But I think that, don't get me wrong, I'm coming up with a criticism here because I think David Raya is the best keeper in the Premier League. And I think he's one of the best keepers in Europe. But I think there are moments in him, like in every top player, where there's a little bit of madness every once in a while where you kind of lose it. And I think with Raya, it's sometimes his being too far outside of the box. Yeah. And it's not always, we're not always punished by it, but there have been times where it's like heart and chest or heart and throat or whatever the expression is. Heart somewhere where it's not supposed to be.
I think heart and throat. I think it's heart and throat.
Sure. Yeah. Heart and throat moments with Raya. And I think we just got punished there. Again, though, preseason, blah, 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 all those caveats, I think he's going to be fine. And you have now a viable backup. So if he's not and he goes into running games where he's an issue, I think that every position on this team is up for grabs. One way or another. Whether there's viable backup for is a different story. I think, yeah, sure, arguably on paper, Saka's position is up for grabs, but there's no one viably taking Saka's position. But I think that's less so maybe the case in the goalkeeper because you are a couple of bad games away and bad run of form and bad games away from just being told to sit it out for a little bit and let the other person do kind of what happened with Leno and Ramsdale. Yeah. And then we've seen it happen a lot. I don't think that's the case. Raya is, again, for the last couple seasons, been the best keeper in the league. But he does have a moment in him, and we can't kind of ignore that.
What did you make of kind of Van de Ven sitting on him during corners and just kind of preventing him from really coming out and claiming crosses and commanding the area? I mean, do you think that's more reflective of a flaw with Raya, or do you think that's kind of something that might not even be allowed in the Premier League?
No, well, I mean, what would be allowed if we did it versus if someone does it to us are very different things. So, would it be allowed if we did it? Probably not. If someone does it to us, I would probably get 60-40. I would say. Yeah. 60% that they would allow it, 40% that they wouldn't. So, obviously he is amazing at commanding his area, specifically when it comes to collecting crosses. That's his wheelhouse. It's the most assured I've been in an Arsenal keeper in that particular scenario game state. So if there's a ball coming in either from a set piece or from a cross or something like that, and our keeper has the ability to go. I've never had in a long time more confidence in an Arsenal keeper than I do with Raya. So it is no surprise to me that they were targeting him, that Van der Ven was targeting him specifically in trying to minimize his ability to do that. You can't do that. I mean, but again, I guess can't. It's kind of whatever the refs allow, right? Like, what are you going to do? Yeah. I think that I hope rather that it would be regulated a little bit more. I think by a Premier League ref, because these refs in Asia have been awful. No offense to them. I think that they have not had the big stage that these Premier League refs have. They haven't had the scrutiny that they have, and Lord knows the Premier League refs are awful too. And then they have their moments. But I think there are certain things that are just allowed in these preseason games that would not be allowed in a League Cup. I'm saying that. I'm almost like, no, the Premier League refs are arguably worse because they should know better. I don't know.
I just feel like with what Van de Ven did, like he was very clearly impeding the keeper, and I feel like that's kind of a standard that they've settled on now,
Only
where
Ben
it's
White can
like,
do that.
yeah, but I like Ben White doesn't like get in front of like Ben White doesn't keep the keeper from moving. You know what I mean? And like we've seen him get called for fouls where he does do that. Um, I just feel like because like Raya was literally trying to get off his line and Van de Ven wouldn't let him. And
Right.
I don't know. Maybe this is naive. I just
I
think
don't think that happens in the Premier League.
yeah, I don't think that flies. Even like maybe a particularly shitty referee will let it go every once in a while, but I think like in a general Premier League match that's not allowed to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
And neither is the trip on Lewis Skelly that led to Spurs' goal.
Insane. I tweeted about that. It's insane that's not called. I mean, I don't get it. No, I do. I mean, obviously, whatever, man. It's just I can't. It's hard to focus on these like little moments like that. You know what I mean? Like it's like you have to address it like clearly. It's part of what happened in the game and stuff like that. But it's like, does that happen in the Premier League? Yeah, it does. We're gonna have to deal with that next season. Stupid shit like that. So maybe it's good.
Maybe not that bad. I will say I have my beef with the PGMOL. I will say I think that kind of foul they'll look at it on VAR and they'll rule it out. Like
they'll rule the goal out. You think? I don't know. So here you have way more faith in them than I do because I
don't even have that much faith.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. So I think that VAR goes and looks at that and then goes, it's too attenuated from the game, from the actual thing to actually, affect the player or whatever. They'll come up with some stupid ass reason why they don't.
I think if they don't have the angle, like if Richarlison's foot is behind Lewis Skelly's foot and you don't really see like the angle in which he brings the foot down, then maybe.
Yeah,
but like
you're right.
In this case, like you could clearly see it.
It was nonsense.
I think that ref was going by Twitter rules, where it's just like that was just such a great goal. Why would I rule it out? And if that's the reasoning, then fair play, I guess. But yeah, it is what it is. I think with Raya, I don't really come away concerned about him from this game, but it's just one of those things where you're kind of reminded of the risk of playing the way that we do with him. And I think ultimately that risk is worth it, but just, you really have to get those passes right and build up. Otherwise that's what happens.
I also think are going to be a lot more assured when we have our main center back partnership back, which according to Arteta should be at the start of next season. I'm a little bit more concerned about not having Trossard, as we kind of discussed, because I know we need a left wing signing. We need an attacking signing on the left.
Yeah.
We need it. I mean, if we go into this season without having made a signing on the left, that's negligent. I'm saying it right now. It's negligent.
I don't think we'll do that. I think there's so much smoke around the Eza thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there were reports coming out today basically saying that the 68 million pound release clause will expire tomorrow, and I think that leaves Arsenal kind of free to start negotiating for an amount under that, which is what it sounds like they're ready to do. And Arteta had a couple quotes this week in pressers, basically saying that he's happy with how the summer's gone transfer wise, but there's a month left, and let's see how things look at the end of that month. This is basically kind of like a paraphrasing.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you what, Arteta. It looks like Trossard's maybe injured, and we really need a left wing, so we don't need to wait until the end of the month. We know that right now. We've needed a left wing signing, and now we especially do if Trossard's injured. So,
as far as I can tell, they didn't put a timeline on Trossard's return. All they said was that he tried to turn and he felt a tweak somewhere and he couldn't continue.
Right.
So
okay. Great. Love to hear that. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Super happy about that. Yeah, but let's wait a month to figure out what we need. No. Obviously,
I
obviously they're
don't think
working behind the scenes. I know they are. So I'm not like criticizing them. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not. But it's like, but I will say, because if they don't, I'm gonna lose it. That's all. That's all I'm saying. If we don't make that,
all I'm saying is if they wait until the very end of the month to bring in Eza, I hope to God we are right about Madueke. I'll put it like that.
I'll wait until the end. It's fine.
Yeah.
We just can't go. We just cannot start the season with, I guess at this point, Martinelli on the left, right, and Madueke as backup, maybe.
No, I think Madueke overtakes him, honestly.
Maybe whatever, or the other way around, whatever. But like that's it. And then, but then if that happens, then there's no backup on the right. Who, you know what I'm saying? Let's say we're gonna play Martinelli on the left, on the right. If something happens to Saka.
No, I think if something happens to Saka, then you play Madueke on the right, and Martinelli on the left.
Okay, fine. That is so
suboptimal. That's what I would do.
That is the suboptimal. That is not. I don't know, man.
I could live with Madueke on the right and Eza on the left, and then Gyokeres in the middle. I think we could still make movies with that for a little.
Madueke on the right, what?
And Eza on the left.
Well, but my point is that we need okay. I'm saying if Martinelli plus someone else is like the options that we have, that I do not think that moved the needle from last season. And when you look at the moves that the other teams are making, it's not enough. It's not enough. Martinelli anywhere as a starter is not enough to win the league or to win any major trophies. I don't think so. And the evidence of that is partially because we've seen a lot of him as a starting player for Arsenal. We've seen him be good. We've seen him be really not good and ineffectual. We've seen him completely blocked out again. I don't have to go over this again. We need to make a left wing sign.
I think as things stand, you need one more attacking signing to genuinely compete for the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need maybe two to be a favorite.
I don't even care about being a favorite anymore. I just want the one. Just get me the one signing. Just so I know.
I'm just saying if Liverpool do get Isak, and it looks like they're going to do that, if they do get Isak, I want to see two guys in that door still. I want to see Eza and like Leao. And I know Drew hates Leao, but Eza and Leao, or like Eza and Rodrigo, if you can somehow make those finances work, I don't think that's all that feasible. But like, I want another guy in that door after Eza.
I'm gonna be 100 with you. I think if if Liverpool sign Isak, I mean, I don't think it really matters who we sign. I don't think we overcome that. I don't think we can.
Maybe I think if Liverpool sign Isak, they probably aren't able. Like if Liverpool sign Isak and then sign like a center back and a defensive midfielder on top of that, we're talking about a £500 million spend in one window. And at that point, I'll hold my hands up and say, okay, fair enough. If you're going to spend that much money, then like you should be winning a Premier League title. But like if they sign Isak and that's the end of it, that's their window, I think they have 3 singular points of failure on the pitch. And if any one of those guys goes,
do me a favor, spell it out your thoughts on that for me, because it's making me calmer. Because I'll tell you, the thought of them signing, and I'm sure a lot of people listening would think the same thing. But like, tell someone like me who has existential dread of Liverpool signing Isak why I should be a little calmer.
Okay. I'm not saying that they are not the favorite for the Premier League if they sign Isak, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they do that, they're all, without him, they're going to score a fuckload of goals.
Right.
So if they do sign him, that's engraved in stone. But if they sign him, I just do not see it in terms of them being able to then go get like Mark Yehi and like a proper defensive midfielder if they can find one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, yes, you have Salah and Verts and Ekitike and Isak and Gakpo and all those guys. Sucks. Like it sucks to see. But you have a back line of Frimpong, Kirkes, and then Konate and Van Dijk. Van Dijk is, 34 years old now. So I think this is going to be the season where he kind of slides down the center back rankings a little bit.
I've been
I don't
saying
think
that for like 2 years, Sham.
No, I think no. I didn't think he was. I didn't really think he was the best last season. If we're being
No, you're
100%,
right. You're right. You're right.
100%
Okay.
honest.
No, this is good. This
But-
is helping me. Please
but-
keep going.
But the thing is, who's behind Konate and Van Dijk in that center back pecking order?
Okay, that's a
Joe
good point.
Gomez.
Yeah. Okay.
Joe Gomez is injured right now.
No,
right?
yeah, and they don't even know how long he's going to. What did they say? They said it's going to be some time.
Yeah, and then in front of them in midfield, right? You have McAllister and Soboslai,
Right,
and
yeah.
I think if they keep Harvey Elliott, that's cool, right? That's fine. But behind, like at 6, they're playing Ryan Gravenberch, who already I think is a very imperfect option there. Who's behind Ryan Gravenberch? Endo? Okay. Am I supposed to be worried about Endo? Like, that's not a Premier League level player, if we're being honest. So, like, what I'm saying is you have 3 guys, Konate, Van Dijk, and Gravenberch, who they are going to be put under a lot of defensive strain because you have Kirkes and Frimpong bombing forward, and then you have Salah, who already spent last season sitting far up the pitch, and you have Isak and/or Ekitike and Verts. You're going to have 6 or 7 guys getting involved in the attack. And then, of course, McAllister and Zoboslai, one of those guys will be involved too, at least. So that means you could have situations very frequently where it's literally Konate, Van Dijk, and Gravenberch kind of sitting behind to prevent the counterattack. And they will get transitioned on. We saw that in the AC Milan game. They will get transitioned on, which means these guys are going to be forced to make repeat sprints over and over and over, right? And Van Dijk's getting older. Konate isn't the most durable player out there. Gravenberch had his injury issues last season. So I think it is pretty likely that at least one of them goes down for an extended period of time. And, there's no one behind them who's really going to contribute that same kind of quality. So this isn't me saying that Liverpool are definitely not winning the title next season. They could still score 150 goals in the league. Then who cares if they're playing like an 18-year-old at center back? But what I am saying is that team is imbalanced currently as things stand. They've put a machine gun turret on top of a Jenga tower right now.
Oh, that's
if they sign,
that's a
if they sign Isak. So it could work. The Jenga tower could hold, or the Jenga tower could come crashing down. And so I just, again, the outlook is not rosy, but I think there is reason for optimism just as long as we do our job and we're competent and balanced and we actually figure out a way to deal with low blocks on a regular basis. So that's all I'm saying.
Just there it is, Mikel. Figure out how to deal with low blocks again. Like, it's been 3 seasons. Like, figure it out. Like, let's go. Come on.
Sign ballers. We've signed all the good defenders. Sign ballers.
Thank you. That's it. But no, thank you, because that does make me feel a little bit better, and I think that you're right. That it does seem to be like this. Have you ever seen that meme? It's like a drawing of the horse that looks like an artist started it off and then a child finished it, and then it's Liverpool's or a race car where it's the same kind of concept. It's this nice Ferrari, and then a kid draws the second half, and then it's Liverpool attack, Liverpool defense. I feel like that it's not really that level yet, but I agree with you that you're right, that it could be that level really soon. Van Dijk goes down, Frimpong goes down. Different story completely in that team. Yeah. So
that's a team full of players who have shown that they're not the most durable, and they are going to be made to sprint a lot.
Yeah.
So
I think they got lucky with injuries last season too.
They did.
Yeah.
And I know Liverpool players hate to say that or hate to admit that, but they did. They got pretty lucky with injuries last season. And Mohamed Salah is going to go play in the African Nations Cup this season. But he loves sitting on the bench for Egypt if it helps Liverpool. So we'll see what happens. I'm not a bitter Egyptian or anything, but yeah. But yeah, I just we'll see what happens. But kind of on that note, before we get out of here, I do want to hit like a couple performances that I find encouraging, right?
Yeah,
and
we can't be completely negative today, right?
No. We gotta leave on a high note.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Let's do it.
But I guess like I have two players in mind right now, and the first one is Zubamendi, and I just think this. Yeah, I think on this Asia tour he's given such a great account of himself. He's come in and he's really just like adjusted very quickly. And I think who was it? I think it was Billy Carpenter who said that he was worried we would get the Real Sociedad Zubamendi, but it turns out we've gotten the Spain Zubamendi.
That's great.
And like, he's pulling the strings. He's really progressive with his passes. He's breaking the lines regularly. And it's so quick and snappy with the 1-2 touch. But he also shows that he can carry every once in a while. And the part that I was worried about was him off the ball. And against Newcastle, he held his own physically, and he made some great tackles. I think he finished 6 tackles against Newcastle. He's just nipping in very intelligently, and he showed a bit of that against Spurs as well. And when he came on against Spurs and took over for Norgard for like those last 15 minutes, we controlled the game. And part of this is Spurs sitting back in their own third, but they didn't get out of their third and counter on us like they wanted to, right? And I think that's down to Zubamendi, really sitting at the top of that final third, pulling the strings, positioning himself really nicely in order to, help regain possession. And yeah, man, I think we have such a critical upgrade there at the base of midfield. I'm so impressed with what we've seen from him so far.
Yeah, tempo. He is a temper machine, and that is a key in how Arteta plays. Right, it's all about cycling possession. It's all about tempo. It's about moving from defense to attack. It's about and he slot in perfectly. And he is one of the things that he does amazingly is he just makes the right pass to the right foot in the right momentum to get a play moving forward in the direction he directs the play. Literally directs the play with how it's not just who he passes to, and it's interesting because this was one thing that Granit Xhaka did really, really well that went under the radar by a lot of people. They were always talking about progressive passes and things like that, and his red card stats and yelling at the fans and whatever they talked about with Granit Xhaka. Yeah. But one thing, and some of that's justified, but I think a lot of what made him so good, kind of low key, was how he could create impetus in attack with just how he passes the balls to certain players, to what foot he passes it to them, in what point in their stride is he passing the ball to them. And these are things that are very hard to kind of learn. There's like an intuition to it that in many cases you have it or you don't. Obviously you can get better at it, but I think what he has seen what I've seen from him that's very promising in these few games that he's played for us is that ability to dictate how the tempo of the match and to create an impetus where it's necessary. That the way that a player receives a ball it's almost a communication to them that says, run, go attack now. The way that you receive the ball, the foot that you receive the ball, the position that he puts the ball in front of the attacking player, the player he's passing to. And I think Partey did that to an extent, but it was really kind of focused on the right-hand side. And I don't think it was as clinical as what I've seen so far. And it's early days, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing from him.
Yeah, just a really impressive player. And I think he's someone whose ceiling really is, the best 6 in the world. So really glad to have him at the club. And the other player who, I'm just so impressed by from this leg of the preseason is Max Dowman.
Oh yeah.
Or shall I say, more like Max WOWman.
Hey.
Hey. But yeah, I don't know. It might be, I might be stretching when I say this, but I feel like if I'm Ethan Nwaneri, I'm looking at Max Dowman and I'm kind of thinking to myself,
Shit.
yeah, exactly. Being like, why? I wish you'd waited like 2 years, right? And I don't want to make a problem where there isn't one. I think honestly, having Nwaneri and Dowman kind of in as like figuring into those 8 positions, I think is really encouraging. But just what we're seeing Dowman do at 15 years old. I in particular I'm thinking about the Newcastle game where he came on and he was running Joelinton ragged for the rest of the match, and he forced Joelinton to foul him in the box, and he earned the penalty, which turned into the winning goal. And just the confidence that he plays with and the maturity and kind of already like the way he's able to physically match up to grown men who play
Yeah.
Premier League football, right? This guy was tussling, he was spinning past defenders, he was outrunning people, he was dribbling through defenders, and he was cutting in and taking some really good shots as well. And he did a little bit of that against Spurs earlier today. Yeah, just overall, just such an impressive player. And the more I see of him, the more difficult it is to imagine that he's not going to figure into this season in some way. Like I last time out, I kind of said to myself, like, he's definitely getting minutes, like maybe later on in the Champions League this season and a couple like league matches, maybe some Premier League games.
Well,
I think Dowman could go on to be someone who comes off the bench regularly for us this season if he
yeah.
continues to show that level. And I don't want to hype him up too much because, again, this is a kid and his development's not linear and all that. But just, the best possible first impression he could have made, to be honest.
Yeah, so a couple things. I don't think he's eligible based on his age for Champions League, but I think he is for the Premier League.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the way that works.
Champions League would be a second half of the season thing. I think he turned 16 in December.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I think for now we'd see him in the Premier League. I agree with you. I can't imagine that we don't see him at some point. Just by the way he's playing now. And I remember the first time we talked about him, and the impressive thing about him at that point was that he, we're looking at this kid and we didn't want to overhype him, but we're going, he's a 15-year-old kid just kind of standing his ground here. I think in that first game, he, like I was saying, I didn't think he really did anything crazy impressive other than being a 15-year-old, being able to put it at that level. And then all of a sudden Newcastle. And then it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. And then he does it again very consistently. So if he can continue that, I mean, what a special talent. That's all. I don't know what else you say. I mean, it's kind of awesome in the literal definition of the word of being awe-inspiring to see this 15-year-old kid be able to sit up like that. And, there were times where I'm going, where I thought it was Odegaard, the way he runs with the ball, kind of Odegaard-esque, like, which is a big compliment, because like Odegaard on the ball is, I might be frustrated with some of the decision making sometimes, but in terms of his technical ability and being able to run with the ball at pace, he's excellent. And there were legit times when I was watching Dowman and I thought it was Odegaard, and all of a sudden I saw Odegaard, he passed Odegaard, and then I would say, oh, that was a 15-year-old kid that I just saw running against Spurs.
It's interesting too, right, to kind of see how players like Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly and Dowman are coming up and kind of betting so well into the first team. And I can't help but wonder if maybe there's something to do with the fact that this Arsenal team is full of players who were teenage stars, right? Bukayo Saka, William Saliba was ripping up Liga as a teenager. Martin Odegaard was like the most famous 15-year-old in football for a little while. Kai Havertz was running Bundesliga when he was a teenager. Even Declan Rice was getting attention fairly early on. And so I wonder if being surrounded by a bunch of those players who have gone on to become elite players, and know how to deal kind of with those expectations and with that environment at that
Mhm.
age. I wonder if that's, helped players in terms of how they've got on. And, Saliba apparently is mentoring Marley Salmon. Odegaard is mentoring Nwaneri. Rice is mentoring Max Dowman. So, I do kind of wonder if, well, not wonder, but I do think it's, I do think Arsenal have played quite a pivotal role and have been quite savvy in terms of how they've dealt with these teenagers coming through.
Yeah, and you look at when we had appointed Jack Wilshere to kind of like help these youth players. Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was such a good idea because there's another example of someone who can kind of impart to them not only what it's like to be an Arsenal Academy graduate, but to come in very early on and to have a lot of pressure on you nationally and internationally, and then how to take your chances when you get them, because football is a short career potentially, and that you
Yeah.
never know what could happen, and that you really need to give it everything you have and just hope for the best. And I was really happy about that when he was teaching them. So in addition to everything you're saying about the players that we have, and I mentioned Martinelli as well, because this is a player who was very young, playing for if you look at Martinelli's involvement in our team in the last half decade, more almost, it's been extensive. In addition to all these players, you have coaching staff that I think are kind of similarly situated. And I think that obviously Jack Wilshere's at Norwich now, right? He's like their interim manager, but
Yeah.
isn't he? Or am
Yeah. I think he's the interim manager,
yeah. But
or at least the assistant.
yeah, but look, the Arsenal team right now is replete with players who are success stories, for youth success stories, and the Premier League is as well. I mean, look, Iwobi is another example of one. He's a player that shows that you can come young through Arsenal and then make it. Theo Walcott was for a while. Emil Smith Rowe is another one. Joe Willock is another one. These are testaments, and we kind of touched on it in the last podcast or the one before. These are the best advertisements that you can have for a youth program, because it's crazy how many youth players from Arsenal are currently in the Premier League and doing well or moderately well, at least.
Yeah. It's why I never really bought into this whole there's no pathway argument that people were making. I think Arsenal have shown for decades now that there is a pathway
Yeah.
into the first team if you're good enough. So
not only is there a pathway into the Arsenal first team, if you come to Arsenal Academy, there's a pathway into the Premier League. It may not be for Arsenal, but you can make it. You can make it in the Premier League coming from an Arsenal Academy.
that's a really good point. Yeah. I think sometimes people think about playing for Arsenal as being the end game, but
That's not the
I
way the
think
players are looking.
yeah.
They say, I want to be a pro footballer in the Premier League, and you can look at Arsenal players and our academy, and you can say very confidently that we have a track record of producing Premier League players.
Yeah, and if you don't get into the Arsenal team, you could still go on to have a great career.
Right.
And there's guys like Yunus Musa even who are a testament to that as well.
And we might sign you back, hopefully.
Oh yeah, and Eza. Wow, I forgot Eza.
And we might sign you back.
We might sign you back. Are you worried at all that Dowman came on and
always constantly worried?
Oh.
All the time about everything. Yes.
Oh.
Any football related questions you have for me?
Are you worried at all? Every minute. No, are you? Oh, I guess let me rephrase this. If you're Nwaneri, should you be worried that Dowman came on and you didn't, or do you think that's just more of a positional thing?
I think he should not count his chickens. Right? I think that maybe not worried, but he needs to be aware that this is not your typical teenager getting. It doesn't seem to be your typical teenager getting a shot in a preseason game. I think that he's generated a lot of buzz, and there's going to be a role for him. And if you're good enough, you're going to get played. If he's tearing it up, there's a universe where he gets played over Nwaneri. So he can't rest on his laurels. So if that's what we mean when we're saying worried, I think he needs to look over his shoulder. He needs to keep his head straight. He needs to make sure that he's training hard and that he's performing when he has the opportunity to do, because I think this is not a typical 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be the typical trajectory of a 15-year-old kid potentially. So
yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. I think right now, Odegaard stayed on the pitch for the whole 90, and that's probably either due to kind of performance plan for him, or not performance plan, but like a fitness plan that they have in place for him, or Arteta really wanting to win this match and going with Odegaard instead of Nwaneri. And we know Nwaneri now is basically the Odegaard understudy, but at the same time, there is someone coming to rip that shirt off his back as soon as he puts it on. So excuse me, that's something that you should be aware about. I'll tell you what, we'll put a bow on it there and go ahead and get out of here. But yeah. I feel better. I feel better after chatting.
Yeah, it's a nice little therapeutic, because losing a North London derby, it sucks. It really it makes you start questioning a bunch of stuff. It makes you start, again, why would you do it before a preseason, in the preseason? But here we are, and I think that it helps put things, like at least chatting about it helps put it in perspective.
Yeah, it's a dumb little preseason game, but at the same time, I was still pretty annoyed about it. So it's nice to kind of put it in perspective and kind of know what needs to be worked on and know what's pretty encouraging. So thank you, listeners, for being here with us, for for listening to us kind of cover all this. You can follow John at 305cast on Twitter. You can follow me at Shamsdale. Oh, and by the way, we're doing a bracket for the worst Arsenal signings of all time. So you can find that on our Twitter page at NotThatGooner. Go ahead and vote in those. The voting should end in a few days, and then we'll cover that in our next episode and just kind of talk about the results, maybe give our thoughts on whether or not we would have voted differently. So again, you can check that out at our Twitter page at NotThatGooner. You can also follow us at NotThatGooner.bsky@social on Bluesky, and you can follow us at NotThatKindOfGooner on Instagram and on TikTok, and you can subscribe to that handle on YouTube as well. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do leave a 5-star review. It really does help get the pod out there towards more and more people. So would be much appreciated. But we will be back early next week to kind of talk about more Arsenal news stuff. I don't think we're playing until like midway through next week, right? I want to say Wednesday.
We're playing Villarreal, I want to say.
Okay. So we'll hopefully be back before the Villarreal game, and then we'll have another episode after the Villarreal game, and we'll cover what happens there. And then hopefully there's an Eza transfer next week to talk about as well. We will see. But yeah, so until then, take care, get your mind out of the gunner, and we will talk to you soon. So until then, bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you.
Already! Here's the Mediterranean. Santi Cazorla! Saka!